The next section is called the AM routine, and this is another game changer. Guys, put down anything and everything you're supposed to do every day. I have an AM personal routine and I have an AM business routine. Do all of your voicemails and all of your texts and all of your emails in one shot. Do them in the morning. Train your clients, say, I listen to voicemails and I respond in the morning, etc., etc. So create an environment where you can get 80% of that stuff off your plate almost immediately. Use audio memos, or another great technique that I've taken up recently is text yourself. Example, you're 11 o'clock in the morning, you're like, I gotta call Tony. Yeah. Don't interrupt your whole day, don't interrupt your whole brain. Just go to your phone and say, hey Siri, text message to Dennis Degnan, call Tony tomorrow morning. Now it's off your plate, it's out of your head, it's not renting space up there. We only have so much space in our brains, guys. Don't rent it out to stupid stuff like call Tony. So start texting yourself or start having some audio memos, something like that. Facebook. Facebook is a great way to build community, okay? It can also be a giant time waster, time resource. It just depends. If you're using it to build community, get in there, schedule a specific time to do it. It might be 15 minutes, it might be 30 minutes. If it's part of you building and re-engaging and engaging with your personal community, fine, that's great. But time limit it, time block it. Make sure you're not talking about controversial subjects, especially with politics, etc. Make sure you don't express things that make sure that half of the people don't like you anymore. Okay? So be careful with Facebook. But use it as a social media engagement tool. Use it as a personal community engagement tool. Here's another one. Always confirm your appointments. In the morning, one of the things I do is I text out and say, hey, we have a 2 o'clock. Are we still good today? And I can't tell you how many hours of my life that has saved me. Somebody, all the time is going to say, well, I was going to call you, but, yada, yada, yada. So make sure that you confirm appointments. Invest your time hour by hour. One of the earlier sessions of this, we talked about demanding results from your time. Decide when you're going to go to work in the morning, when you're going to stop, and don't just plop a couple of appointments in there, but schedule hour by hour how you're going to get results. The next section is called Getting Your Brain Back. Take everything and dump it. The oil change, the dentist, calling this guy about the listing. Get it out, get it on the list. Next morning, call the guy about the listing. It might be a task you're going to have for Thursday. It might be a task you're going to have for today. Most people spend more time getting to the dentist than they do planning out their lives. Don't do that. Deposit. This is an important principle of time management. Have what they call this. David Allen will talk about having a capturing system. You have Tony floating through your brain, right? How are you going to capture Tony and make sure that whatever you need to get done with Tony happens? I mentioned the idea of texting yourself, getting some kind of a system in place to make sure that that happens. The one thing I don't want you to do is to let that get by you, because that's when the trouble starts. Deposit anything and everything into a trusted source. Sort them in the morning, distribute them into an appropriate place, and then chunk down complex tasks. Sometimes we have a tendency to take a complex task and turn it into a down the roader. Okay, we're like, oh yeah, I got to do that whole thing, yeah. And one of the reasons why is because a complicated, difficult, or maybe challenging task can just be overwhelming. And you can always tell when you have one of those because you're like, oh yeah, I got to do that. So take that task, schedule a time, and for the first thing I want you to do with that difficult, challenging task is chunk it down. Okay, let's say that it's a task with 30 steps. What's the first step? What's the second step? Why? Create an outline for yourself and develop a process, a procedure, a protocol for making that task happen. If you don't, you're probably just going to keep right on kicking it down the road. And that would be too bad, because some of those complicated tasks are the most important ones. The other one is that I would suggest on this particular subject is taking care of yourself, okay? Not your physical health, your mental health. So how do you do that? The quiet time in the morning, the power hour, the exercise, a little bit of quiet or meditation time, 20 minutes of organizing in the morning. If you do that, the rewards will speak for themselves. I sat down with an old friend of mine that I kind of bought into the business, and he called me up one day and he said, I make $90,000 a year and I hate my life. This was a long time ago. I said, well, let's have lunch. And I sat down and told him, do the 20-20-20, do the power hour, and then after that hour, clear the decks, call everybody back, do the voicemails, do the emails. And we created a 2-hour window in which he could grab control of his life. And I said, Michael, if you do this, within 2 or 3 months, you're going to call me one day and you're going to say, my life has changed. Please do this. Don't do it for me, do it for yourself. It's not something I invented. It's something I learned from people that are smarter than me. And I'm pleased to report that he called me back in a week. And he was excited, he was thrilled, and his life had changed. So I hope some of these principles are things you grab and run with, because they're really, really important. We don't have any experience in this, guys. Like, when we grow up, teachers tell us what to do. Then we get a job. And our employer starts to tell us what to do. Most of us coming into the real estate business don't have a lot of skills in this area. And they're very, very important, and I hope you grab them. Thanks.